This week, I'm going to be making a conceptual skin for the League of Legends character, Tryndamere, and I'll be doing that using Photoshop. League of Legends is a popular online MOBA game with over 100 champions. Every champion has several skins which can change their aesthetic. This is Tryndamere. These are some of his skins. Very violent. These are the Star Guardians. These are some of their skins. Very not. My friends and I play League every week together, and one of them is always asking me to see what Trynd would look like as a Star Guardian. So here is my take on Star Guardian Tryndamere. I started with this image from an artist named Paul Kwan. I isolated the parts I wanted, and then I got straight into making the skin. You can see here that my goal when I first start is just to isolate all the shapes so that I can manipulate everything. Once I had that done, I decided maybe that wasn't the way to do it and that I was going to overpaint everything. So I just started off by making layer after layer and overpainting each of the individual shapes of Tryndamere's armor. One thing I noticed looking at the Star Guardians is that their color scheme relies heavily on white, a single color, and then gold as an accent. So I'm deciding which parts of his armor to make gold, which parts to make white, and which to leave in that color. Now moving on to his hair, I think he should have some magical hair. The Star Guardians themselves are based on Sailor Moon, so everything I'm doing is to try to incorporate that aesthetic as well. Here I've added in the white over all the black on his armor. Now I'm just going to go through and I'm going to drop in some drop shadows and give some shading, bring form back to his body so it's not just that white. Once I'm done with that, I move on to cutting out his hair, which unfortunately I didn't isolate well enough. You'll see several times I have to go back and fix my original selection, which honestly was kind of lazy. So I spent more time than I wanted to kind of going back and fixing that selection. Take his hair, isolate that out, and then I decide how much more of it I want. It feels like it needs to be more flowing and more epic. Now I'm going to separate this star that I've brought in for his belt buckle instead of the demon face that was there. And I'm going to use that star in various other places around his armor. Got some warp tool goodness here. Lots of warping in there. At every step of this, I go through and I add more shadow and more shadow. It's just about gradually building up that shadow until we get something that feels correct. this point I decided that he needed some different type of horns. In all of the original Star Guardian images, you can see they have a lot of kind of feathers, this feathered aesthetic. So I wanted to do something instead of Viking horns, kind of give him some feathered horned aesthetic. So I lay out some basic shapes here, and then you'll see I go back and refine those. It took forever, so I just kind of cut that part out. At this point, I've decided that maybe his armor is a little too ornate. While it's really good in the original, I think that the Star Guardians have a much more simplified aesthetic. So I'm going to go through and you'll see me eliminate a lot of that really overbearing detail that's good for a Viking, not great for Star Guardian / Sailor Moon character. Lots of layers of shadows and highlights just to try to make that gold look good. Then here you can see where I start the overpainting process on all of his armor, just to make sure it's kind of nice and flat color, but also giving that color a good depth. Now it's time for more stars. He is a Star Guardian after all. Now I go back onto these horns. There's a lot of detailing to do in terms of getting the color and shade right so that everything looks like it's descending into space properly and that everything is shadowed well. That's what'll give it all its form. Now we're onto the background and particles. Once I get all my particles in, I want to go ahead and focus on some ambient lighting. So you can see here I'm shifting around the hues of the spirals around him so that I can get a nice blue from the top right and then that kind of pink color from the top left. I'm going to use those to create reflected light off of his armor and his skin. Really the parts that are sticking out the most to the right get this blue touching those edges. You can see I'm kind of focusing on those here. Once I'm done with that, I'll move on to some pink. Kind of same process over and over. I use an adjustment layer and hue and saturation just to get those where I want them. While doing my reflected light, I noticed that the hair was just not a good enough selection. So the last thing I'm going to do here is go back and look at that hair, and then I'll put some reflected light on the hair, just like I did the other surfaces. And then we should be good and ready to switch to what is my favorite filter in Photoshop, the Camera Raw filter. Put in a little blur. Now it's time to change around the settings on Camera Raw so we can get our final finished piece. And there it is. This is Star Guardian Tryndamere in all of its glory. Let me know what you think down below in the comments, and let me know what you think I should do in future videos. I've made a lot of changes since my last video, and I'm hoping to release at least one video a week from here on out, so check back soon for more content. If you like this video, consider subscribing. That would be awesome for me. Thanks.